I'd been out attending to some jobs, and I had Travis on a job, my brother. I went by there. He wasn't there. And I thought, well, everything's gone to pot, And it was a cold day. Well, the night before, I'd set up listening to the radio for about 11, and I heard somebody's song being played from way up north somewhere, and they said how good he was doing, and everything. And they said a winter snowstorm is pushing out across the Midwest, and I knew Buddy was up in that area, and I thought, well, he'll be in it, Went on to bed. But the next day I was up running around, and I had had the radio on all day, and I went in to eat at a little cafe up there, and I went by my house first, and wasn't nobody there. I thought, well, I'll go to the cafe and eat. And that lady at the cafe, she sort of knew who I was. She said, "Is your name Holley?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "That was sure bad about the boys, wasn't it?" And I said, What boys?" And she said, "Well, on the radio, they had a plane crash." And she said, "Buddy Holley and all of them was in a plane crash." I said, "Oh, no, you must have just been hearing something. I'd have known about it if they had." She said, "Well, you better listen to the radio and get in touch with your folks." So I went over and put a quarter in and phoned and tried to phone Mother. Her line was busy.
I had dropped the receiver. My phone had rang again. Just as this news broadcast came over the radio, the phone rang again, and I picked up the receiver. And when the announcer said what he did, been a small plane crash, I just put everything together and I knew what had happened. And that's the last I heard.
I'm surprised that
I dropped the receiver then, and I think it stayed off the hook for a good while.
I'm surprised you were never told by the police. Is it normal in America?
Well, you see, the police there, the people there in Mason City, Iowa, didn't even know what Buddy's home address was on the New York, because that's where he was living there with Maria Lena. And they, I suppose...
We were the last ones in the world really to find out about it.
I suppose that they got in touch immediately with the booking agent that had Buddy booked for this tour. Mm-hmm. And they were headquarters in New York.
But I went over to Mother's and I saw several cars there. Mother and Daddy were just in bad shape, I kept thinking that maybe if he just got wounded or something, that I just praying and everything, on the way over there. When I saw it really happened, they needed somebody to go up to Iowa and try to make the identification. And so I said, well, I'll go. And my brother-in-law, J.E., went with me, and when we got up there, it was snow all over the ground. We went out there where the plane crash was. The plane was still there, and all their clothes and everything. But they took the bodies to the funeral home. There was a stack of good-looking clothes about that big, just stacked up. They said, "You want these?" I said, "No, I don't." Now, the only thing I reached down and picked up that little ditty bag of Buddy's, picked it up, and I said, "This is all I want." We went on back, and I couldn't make the identification. I was too upset. Jesse did. And then on the way back, I was just praying to the Lord that He would help Mother and Daddy to get over this. I just knew it nearly killed me, And I said, "Lord, I just got one prayer left. That's the one that you'll have to get over."
Well, you see, Buddy making such a big commotion right then with his music. All of our hopes would depend on him, and we were just, all of us.
They've been so poor all their life, and I said,
we weren't thinking about the money,
Lord,
though.
I hope that you'll help them to have a easy get by from now on, and get over this. And He has. Mm-hmm. Mother and Daddy, next time I seen them when I got back from Iowa, they were calmed down, and they could listen to his records not long after that, or keep his pictures up, but I couldn't.
I wanted them everywhere,
And I couldn't even, I've had pictures of Buddy put up for years. Just the last few years, the only time I could get them out. And
But-
I didn't listen to the radio.
They kept putting this same broadcast on every now and then, see, on the radio. And so the second time when they said it, I listened long enough to hear them say that it's rumored that Buddy Holly might have been one in the plane. And so I thought too, like Larry, that maybe he was just hurt, see. All day long they kept trying to get some news. I guess it wasn't 5 minutes after we got this particular news till the front door opened and Brother Johnson came in.
Yeah, preacher.
And Kenneth Johnson was with me. And I remember so well that Kenneth Johnson, I always thought, I don't know if you ever thought so or not, looked a little bit like Buddy. He had that
He
big
did a
nose
little bit at one time.
when he was a kid and he was
He
young.
was younger.
So when I saw Brother Johnson come in and I looked behind him and saw this Kenneth, and he, for a fleeting moment, I thought it was Buddy. You know, I thought, well, they're fooling me or something.
But boy, I tell you, there was 10 or 15 years I didn't even listen to the radio.
In case they played one of his records.
Well, I didn't want to hear anybody's. I felt like Buddy was the best one that there was. And
We
he was
just
dead,
lost
and
interest in music.
We just lost
see.
interest completely.
And Larry wouldn't fly in a plane anymore for a while. He said he thought he'd give up flying.
I just got my license to fly 2 weeks before he got killed.
Well, Buddy wanted to fly, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me and him had flown together. In fact, we took some lessons together, and I was further along than Buddy. We'd get a plane, go out and fly around in it together.
They, when they were trying to figure out what the cause, when the aviation people were trying to figure out what was the cause of the plane crash, they tried to bring up the idea that maybe Buddy was sitting in the pilot's seat at this particular time.
He had been sitting on the right-hand side, which is not the pilot's seat, but
No,
fly
I
from
know.
either
Of course,
side.
he wouldn't have been trying to fly, but they thought
No,
maybe he
no,
would.
take off.
I'll tell you who
Although-
it was. This.
Buddy was probably very interested in what he was doing.
Yeah.
Well,
He
it
probably
was
wasn't
night, of
sitting
course,
up front.
dark, and I imagine that Buddy had immediately leaned his head back to take a little nap. That's what I imagine.
No, I don't imagine, Mother. I imagine that he was interested in flying, especially at night over snow, that he was looking out.
He might have been.
And they must have got into some bad weather and got vertigo. That's all I can figure out. They had I got the full report from the Civil Aeronautics. It took me a year to get it, but I got it. And they had installed a new Sperry gyroscope in the airplane. And the pilot had been taking some instrument lessons, but he hadn't passed his instrument rating.
They didn't read the history, right?
Well, this Sperry works different than any other gyro. Artificial horizon. One of them, the background moves and the plane stays like this. The little plane in the gyro, and the other one, the background stays steady, and the plane moves, and they work just backwards.
So
And
when
up
he would
and
have thought,
down.
this is the part where when he thought he was going up, he could actually be going
Yeah,
down.
he could have been reading it just backwards.
Well, that's what we figured.
That's the only thing we could figure, that he got into the weather where he couldn't see out, and they were heavily loaded. Of course, he could have had a failure, an engine failure or something, with that heavy a load.
What, 4 people?
4 people, but they had a lot of baggage and the guitars and stuff, and them little planes not supposed to carry over about 1,000 pounds, you know.
Oh, that's not a lot, is it?
But
It
the
was an 8-mile
GAC was the booking agent that had them booked, and they, of course, didn't want to have to pay us anything at that time, which, of course, we thought, well, we'd get a little bit of money from that, so they didn't want to pay. And they were the ones that brought up the idea that maybe Buddy was doing the flying, and that way, of course, that wouldn't have had to pay us anything. But that was the only thing
Well,
that was said
pilot,
about that.
in them kind of conditions, wouldn't have turned it over to anybody. Because the pilot was just 21 himself. And them guys are good, but they don't have the knowledge of when to go and when to not go. They got more guts than they got knowledge.
But we talked to that fella there. I guess everybody can think of his name, but except me, that had charge of the surf ballroom that night. See, we went there. Me and him made 2 trips there, and we saw him each time. Well, he told us. He said he talked to the boys that night, and I went out the airport with them, and he said they were all. He says I remarked to them that they were not drinking like most groups that come in to play, most bands that come into place, and I made the remark that they were not drinking. He said, just noticed how nice they were and how mannerly. And also Larry said the investigators told him, what was it you said they told you about? They tried to find some record of drugs in Buddy's past, but hadn't been able to find anything.
Seems like there's something of that nature.
I've got it in print.
Buddy never took drugs, did he?
What?
Buddy never took drugs.
No. But they tried to find
They
something.
always investigate.
They
See if
investigate
there's
those
any
things, see, and they
possibility.
said hadn't been able to, the investigators, for such as that, whoever they are, hadn't been able to find any drugs or intoxication or anything like that in Buddy's past.
But there's really, according to the investigation, they never did really figure out what caused it.
Just laid it to pilot error.
It's nicer that way, isn't it? So as opposed to put any direct blame on anybody, if they can just leave it as it was pilot error.
Of course,
And
it
there's a lot
was,
to
I don't
Probably
feel like it
conditions.
was pilot error even myself,
you don't.
because that guy told me and Daddy when we were up there. He said that. Or he told me it was me and J.E.
Yeah, J.E. went with
Yeah, he said. I said, well, it wasn't snowing. He said, it wasn't snowing at the time they took off. He said, I watched the tail out of the plane until it got plumb over the horizon, and I could see it's his plane. It was a cold, crisp night, and he said you could navigate better at night in the wintertime up there than any time, because at every farmhouse you could see it, you know, and with white snow on the ground. He said there's no way that they could have.
It doesn't stand to reason anyway, if he was gaining altitude with his contraption in front there, that he could continue to gain altitude, wouldn't he? He wouldn't have read
He
it
should have been
backwards.
still. He should have been still climbing instead of going down. But he said he did notice it looked like they were getting lower, but he just attributed it to the fact that he thought they was getting into the distance, you know. And
Well, they
really,
probably were at that particular time from him.
although they weren't 15, they weren't over 15 miles from the deal. Same further than that going by car, but they had to watch
Oh, he
the
must
range.
have had some kind of little airplane trouble.
I just nearly know that.
You reckon an engine failure?
I just wouldn't be a bit surprised,
And-
except they said they didn't think there was any engine failure because they hit the ground too fast, too hard.
And rose
The
up
plane, You
again.
can see where it hit, and then it went up, and then.
But that would happen anyway if they had an engine failure. He's starting to come down at that kind of angle.
Yeah, but of course he was heavily loaded. They've got a pretty nice glide on them.
They said the left wing was digging into the snow in the earlier tracks before it got on down the way. One of the wings, right or left one.
That makes me think that it could have been the gyro. Just when you get that close to the ground, you quit watching the instruments anyway.
Yeah.
If you can see the ground, but being rolling, he might have thought. You look down at the snow ground that's rolling from the air, and you cannot tell that it's rolling. It looks just like it's flat. You can't
Well,
see
I
the
wonder
hump.
if they could see the snow at all, you know.
It-
I would have thought it would be too dark.
For the longest, I thought that it would have been, no, Mother. If it wasn't snowing, just blinding the windshield, they could have seen the ground easy. On a night when there's snow on the ground, you can see real good on the ground. You can see farms, houses.
See the lights and things.
Now, if they got into some clouds that covered them up and a bunch of
Yeah.
snow flurries, then they could have got vertigo. been going down, and they thought they were still climbing.
They had been given a indication that it was clear enough for them to drive.